All flights are now boarding. Welcome to Indie Game International.
We are here today once again for a second time with GrimTalin. GrimTalin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you. And very nice to be here again.
Yes, I'm a huge fan, as people should know if they've heard the first interview, of your game, The Adventures of Elena Temple, which we discussed at length last time. But this time, it's funny, during that interview, I had no idea that Elena Temple was not your most recent game, and that Long Ago a Puzzle Tale is your most recent game, correct?
Yes, it is.
When did
At least the most recent released game.
Right. When was it released?
It was released on May 28th this year on Nintendo Switch, Steam, and Xbox.
Was it a simultaneous release for all three platforms?
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. So before we get into that, that'll probably be my first question. Why don't you tell us about Long Ago, A Puzzle Tale? Tell us what it is and what kind of game it is. Just give us the elevator pitch, I like to say.
Absolutely. I'm very bad at elevator pitches, so here we go. Long Ago Puzzle Tale is, as the title suggests, a puzzle game. It combines classic mechanics, the roll the ball and it stops whenever it hits an obstacle kind of mechanic, with very serene graphics, relaxing music, and fairy tale like story told in rhyme and completely voice acted.
Yes, and I did, as soon as our last interview was over, I purchased the game, I played it. It is a very challenging game, I will say. I love puzzle games, but as much as I love puzzle games, I feel like at the same time I'm always kind of afraid of them, you know? Because it kind of sucks when you get into a puzzle game and then you realize like maybe you're just not smart enough for them, or you're like not good enough. But the challenge in Long Ago, I think, is pretty well balanced. I love to binge games. I love to play a whole game like not in one sitting, but like just start a game and complete it before I move on to another one. But with this one, I found myself not able to do that. But at the same time, every time I come back to it, like I'll play it and then I'll get stuck. I'll put it down. And then when I come back, I'm like instantly back into the groove and I start completing levels. Was it your intention to make a difficult game?
Let's take it one step at a time. So no, it's definitely not that you or other players aren't smart enough when it comes to puzzle games. It's just very typical to not see the solution. Usually for a puzzle game to be good, to be, at least a bit challenging, it needs to have solutions that aren't like obvious. It needs to have a little bit of thinking outside the box. So that's why people get stuck in these kind of games, because for some reason at that exact point, you don't see that outside the box solution. But again, like you said, if you leave it alone and you come back to it later, you might like instantly see, oh yeah, well, that was so obvious. I didn't. I don't know why I didn't see that earlier. Right. So yeah, that's kind of like the backbone of how puzzle games are built and how they should be built. And I play a lot of puzzle games myself too, and I definitely have exactly the same issue, so to say, like you do. I get stuck, I leave it alone, I come back to it later. I tend to find the solution much faster. Regarding your question, if I intended to design a very challenging game or not, it was not necessarily my intention for it to be very challenging. It was my intention for it to be challenging enough so as to not become boring, first of all. And then for that challenge to not be exactly the same in all the levels. So some levels, like the solutions can be found just by thinking, okay, I have 2-3 possible paths that I should follow. I'm just going to try them and I'm going to find a solution. And for some of them, it's going to be, wait, I need to go, ahead and then go back and then go ahead again or something like that. And at some points, it just loop around or something like that. So maybe that's one of the reasons that causes the challenge in the game, because you can't always, you can't get inside the pattern where you figure out 10 levels and the rest of the levels like, well, I kind of understood how this developer thinks. I'm just going to do that and I'm going to find the solutions. So hopefully that doesn't happen. So if people get stuck a little bit, that's a good thing in my opinion. Yeah.
So you did mention that one of the keys to solving puzzles in a puzzle game is to think outside the box.
Yeah.
You as the person creating the puzzles, do you ever go through a similar pattern of you create the puzzle and then you say, like, do you find yourself as the puzzle creator having to think outside the box? Like, I can't even imagine how you create a puzzle knowing the solution and knowing whether it even works for someone who doesn't know the solution. How do you figure that out?
So one of the things, putting aside like the layout of the level and all that, because there it's, it depends on every developer. I usually try to make levels that are cool mechanically, that are interesting visually, that, I tend to combine them. But when it comes to the solution, all I can say is that I tend to play my levels maybe at least 100 times before I settle on a design. And all those playthroughs are exactly looking for that optimal path that is actually interesting. So I move an element around, I try to find a new solution. I try to see if it's actually interesting to do, if it's not too obvious, if it's not too obscure, and so on. So it's a lot of trial and error. I don't have like a tool, generate puzzle and boom, I have it. Release game. No, I did have a tool that parses. After I settle on a design, I have a tool that parses the entire level and it greedily tries to find the best solution. It usually takes a few minutes, and sometimes if the level was too complex, it took hours. But I used that mostly to be sure that the solution was actually the most optimal solution for that level.
So you're saying you have some kind of software that could figure out your puzzles, like an AI?
Well, yeah, something very basic, very, very basic. It doesn't do anything too smart. So for example, if you have the ball in one position, you will have at most 4 directions you can go. So it takes the first direction and then it has another 4 or maybe less, depending on the obstacles and so on and so on. And when it exhausts one path, it just starts going back. So it's just a greedy method. That's what it's called in programming. So it just tries to analyze all possible paths. That's why sometimes it takes hours to figure out the best solution.
So is that a similar mechanic? Maybe I'm not phrasing this properly, but with like the hint system that you implemented in the game?
No, the hint system was, it has predefined solutions that, again, I added there manually. I used the optimal solution that my algorithm found as the gold solution. And then I came up with less optimal solutions, but, paths that were, again, still interesting. And for example, the silver solution, usually it's 1 or 2 moves more than the gold solution. And then for the bronze one, it's again 1, 2, maybe 3 moves more. So all those solutions were added manually for each level. And then when the hint meter charges, let's say it hits the silver, it's going to show you step by step the, already defined solution that's in there for the silver level.
Okay. Do the gold solutions have only one solution? The gold metal have only one?
Not necessarily. So one thing is for sure that you can't I mean, at least you shouldn't be able to find a solution with less steps than the one that's, included for the gold solution. But it's definitely, it does happen indeed that some levels have more than one gold solution. Yeah, I mean, it happens. You can approach them in different ways. Not all of them, definitely, but it does happen.
I will say I don't have very many gold medals in the game. I found it pretty challenging, but it was very rewarding to kind of go back to the beginning and try out the levels that I only got like 2 diamonds, or like the little blue diamonds you get for each.
Yeah, the gems one.
Right. I found it fun to go back and try to redo the levels. I also want to say this puzzle game has so many mechanics that are like constantly being introduced. Like today, I still haven't completed the game. Like I said, I often pick it up after taking breaks and get a little further. And today, I first came to the part where there's like the little gates that you can open. So interestingly enough, I mean, every level is a square with you can either go left, right, up, or down in 4 directions, but you're constantly introducing these mechanics. Were there any mechanics that you thought of that you couldn't implement that you wish you could have?
I did have like a list, and then I tried to pick 3 or 4 mechanics for each chapter to introduce. There probably were some there that they didn't make that much sense, like from a design point, not necessarily that I couldn't implement them technically. They just didn't feel interesting enough, or they were less interesting than the ones that I actually put in the game. And not just interesting, they also needed to be intuitive enough, and they needed to complicate the level, but not too much as to make it, chaotic. So you feel like you have no control. You just randomly try directions and you see what happens. So I needed mechanics that were simple enough for you to be able to predict a few moves ahead. So you can actually play the game, not just play it randomly.
Right. I want to talk about the story aspect of it, because once again, we mentioned, or at least I mentioned in the last interview, how impressed I was with the story you told about the fake developer within Elena Temple. Did you wrote all the words that are spoken in this game?
Yeah, absolutely.
I am eternally impressed with that ability, that you're able to code, that you're able to make video games and make puzzles, and then you're also a really good writer. I'm curious. This might be a naive question, but I'm curious about language and about rhyming, right? So your game is told in like a medieval tale, right?
Yeah.
And it's told in like a poem, correct?
Yeah.
With rhyming?
Yeah.
So you wrote it in English?
Absolutely, yeah.
So if you play the game translated, does it rhyme?
If I translate it in Romanian?
Yeah, like...
it was written directly in English.
But like, so if you're in another country and you download the game, can you play it? Can you have it in another language?
No. It's localized just in English. So
okay.
And that's because I'm so used to speaking and thinking in English. So one of the advantages of living in Eastern Europe, at least, is that here, when we were kids, at least, there weren't any subtitles. Very few subtitles, and definitely nothing was localized. The voices weren't dubbed or anything, so everything was in English, and that really helped us, grow up with English. And that's why I'm able to make, I'm not sure if they're very good rhymes, but I was able to make some decent rhymes, let's say, in English, even though I'm not a native.
Right. No, I found the writing to be incredible, and that's. I'm in no way doubting a person who English is their second language, their ability to write well in English. I'm more curious about I don't know, and this isn't even just a video game question. It's more about translation in general. For instance, I just played through a game. I'm interviewing one of the writers, right? This new game called Lost in Random. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
So I just played through the entire game. So much of the game is about language, and it's about how people speak to each other. A lot of characters speak in rhymes. Pretty much everything is a pun, right? Like the dice is named Dicey, which means something. It's like it's a double meaning.
Yeah.
There are like 10 different languages you can put the game in. So I'm always just curious about how translation affects intent when it comes to writing. Do you have any ideas or comments on that?
Yeah, I think most developers, at least in my knowledge, most developers think their games in English or maybe in their native language, if it's one of the common languages. So that's why for example, that's why you can have a game that is made by a Japanese developer and then it comes to, North America, and then the English doesn't really make sense. And you have some translations there that are like, what? And maybe it was something really funny that made a lot of sense in Japan, but it doesn't make sense in America, right? So that's why I'm saying that, like most developers, I think from Europe and North America and whatnot, they just think they write their game in English, and then they try to have translation teams or other companies that have such services localize the game, because it's a different thing. So localization doesn't just mean to translate the words. It means to localize whatever you wanted to say in English. You localize it to a new meaning, like a new expression that makes sense in the new region. And that can be a hit and miss. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It really depends on the person that does the localization, how good they are, how well they understand what the original wanted to say in English, and so on. So that's why, for me, for example, as a very tiny developer, and I do get asked this, is this game going to come out in another language? And I usually tend to avoid doing that, because I can understand my native language. I can understand English. I can understand a bit of French, let's say, and a bit more of Spanish, but not enough so that I can be comfortable that whoever localizes my game does a very good job, because ultimately when somebody from France, let's say, buys my game and plays it, if it's not localized well, they don't care about who made the localization for me, and I paid money to that person to do that. They're going to come to me and it's going to say, this is a shit game. You didn't pay attention to this audience, and it's like, okay, it's better not to have one than to have a very poor one. Because if you don't have one, then the person just says, okay, it doesn't have it. I can decide if I can understand English. Cool, I'll buy it, and that's it. If it says it has French, but it has bad French, then that's just a lie from me, the developer, to you, the player.
Okay, that's fascinating. And thank you so much for getting into that, because that sounds like it's really good advice. I wouldn't have thought of that myself. One more question about language, though. Do you think it's weird playing Lazarus, for instance, which takes place in Romania, and they're speaking English? Like, is that weird for you?
For me personally, no. I like I said, I grew up with like all forms of entertainment, mostly in English. I didn't enjoy that much the Romanian entertainment. So, everything makes sense in English for me and for a lot of people in Eastern Europe. But, yeah, we do occasionally have people who say, well, why aren't they talking in Romanian? And it kind of makes sense, the question and the expectation, but there are a lot of people in this world that are very accustomed to having the game play at least in English, to having the voices in English. So like the only solution to, have the two sides come together is to have the game voiced in English and to have the game voiced, let's say, in Romanian, right? So I can't make a game and sell it globally and like all the voices are in Romanian and the subtitles are in English. So, well, I can make that, but it's a huge risk that I'm taking, right? Yeah. There's a huge audience out there that doesn't want to read subtitles. And that's very common knowledge. It happens a lot in films, and, I don't want to get too much into that, but it's just fact. There's a huge audience that doesn't like subtitles. And so I can't risk that huge audience for the sake of, authenticity and whatnot. I prefer having the games, be voiced in English, to have decent voices. Again, this is something so subjective that some people are going to say your characters sound great, and some people are going to say this is the worst voiced character ever. We can't make everyone happy, but if I'm gonna, so that's one aspect, and then there's the aspect of the financial implications. So if I want to have both versions, I still need to pay Romanian actors. And you might think, well, yeah, but those should be much cheaper. Not necessarily. So, for example, I can use various services and like less known actors that speak English natively, that do a decent job, but I can't just go around on the street here and try to find a Romanian come voice my game. I need to go and find actors, and there aren't very many services here, who put me, okay, there's like this 1,000 people from Romania who can do voice acting. No, it's much harder to find a decent voice actor here. So, and again, you still need to pay them, and it's complicated. So like the easiest solution, at least for me as a small developer, is to have the game voiced in English.
Right. It makes perfect sense. I was curious just about your thoughts on that subject. And I want to take a real quick second to say thank you to you and everyone that I've interviewed for having the ability to speak English for the benefit of me and my audience and all of the English-speaking audience who aren't able to speak or understand any other language. I'm consistently amazed and grateful and surprised that I've interviewed people from all over this world, and they all speak English, and it makes my life so much easier. So thank you. So let's get back into.
I'm just happy that I can make myself be understood.
Yeah, no, you speak English very well, so there's no problems there. So back to the puzzle game. What are your favorite puzzle games, and did any of them act as inspiration for what you created in long ago?
That's so like the most favorite puzzle game for me is definitely The Witness by Jonathan Blow. That's like, I don't think anything can surpass that game. It's not just the puzzle design, which is genius. It's, the entire mode and how everything is built. And that's just like the most memorable one. When it comes to inspiration, I can't say that I had like one or two games that actually inspired me. It's just like my whole experience playing games from the genre from since I was young to up until now. The one thing that I wanted to do, like the world didn't need another puzzle game, that's for sure. So there are thousands of them, but it just was too appealing for me as a dev. I really wanted to make a puzzle game, and when I started, I was thinking, okay, why am I making this? What do I want to bring? Not necessarily new. I don't really. I don't want to get too much into this, but I don't really like all this trend especially in reviewing games today, that everybody complains, okay, this game isn't innovating enough. I don't think things should be innovating. I don't think every book and every movie and every game and every piece of entertainment that ever comes out should be innovating. I think it should be good. I think it should influence you in some way. I think it should trigger some emotions. And as long as it does that and it does it well, I really couldn't care less if it was innovating or not. So for example, the art of writing books, I don't think it evolved that much. But that doesn't mean every book that we review, we say, well, it's not innovating. It's a book. It needs to tell a good story and touch your heart in some way. It doesn't need to be innovating. So I didn't set out to do this puzzle game to make, like a very innovating mechanic or whatnot. I wanted to make a good puzzle game. I wanted to make it very relaxing. I wanted to have it be diverse in terms of mechanics. Like you said, you keep uncovering new mechanics. That's one of the issues I usually have with puzzles. I play a lot of puzzles. I finish very few of them. That's because a lot of them stop bringing anything new to the table other than just new levels. So I played 40 levels and I'm like, yeah, okay, I get it. I understood. What else? How else are you spicing up the gameplay after 40 levels? So you have this puzzle with like 500 levels. Cool. But if after the first 40 levels, the rest of 460 levels are using the same mechanics, why? There's nothing new, for me as a player at least, why I want to keep playing. So that were like the reasons why I wanted to make it. I wanted to be diversified. I wanted to be very relaxing, and I wanted to avoid players getting stuck. That's why I made that hint system. That was like my main gripe with puzzle games is if you come to a bad level, maybe it was designed poorly, maybe you just can't understand it. I don't want you to be in a position where I'm going to go Google this solution. I want you to stay inside my game. I want you to give you a hint inside my game. I want you to continue without losing the immersion and the relaxation that you had up until this point.
Okay, that is fascinating. I never thought of that because I occasionally, not necessarily with puzzle games, because the whole point is to figure it out on your own. But occasionally, if I get stuck in a video game, I look it up. Like if I have no other option on the internet, because you could literally any game, someone has a walkthrough. But I really don't like doing it. I only do it if I absolutely have to, like if I cannot figure out how to proceed. But you're right. If the hint system is implemented within the game, you're right. It doesn't break immersion. You think that, okay, this is here for a reason, because looking stuff up on the internet, it just feels like cheating. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's amazing that you're able to, that you have the foresight to be able to realize that you don't want people looking it up. Just implement a hint system. That's very cool.
Yeah, and that comes directly from the fact that I'm actually a puzzle player myself. So I it's like a lot of people say, think about the market, and I'm like, no, I think about my experience. I think about how I want to do them as someone who actually plays and enjoys these sort of games. Right. And then, if the market agrees with me, it's a good idea. Awesome. If not, but I'm not in the position to make games in the way that I think the market wants it, or to have playtests with hundreds of players who give me feedback and tell me, oh, you should do that and this and that. No, I'm just a tiny developer, and I do this thing because I love it and I love creating things, and hopefully people like them. If not, I just go cry in the corner and I start the next game, and that's it.
Okay. Well, did you playtest long ago at all? Like with anyone?
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I did.
I figure with a puzzle.
I had friends. I had them, and I had also the demo that I released a bit earlier. Again, for people to try it out and to maybe find bugs in like the structure or the compatibility with their systems and whatnot. I had the demo on Steam, similarly to how we have the demo with the Lazarus. One of the reasons is again to get some feedback with potential crashes and problems with compatibility and all that. So yeah.
Got it. So the visuals in long ago, I played the game on Switch. So I'm sure it looks even better on PC, but visually, I think it's a gorgeous game. It's like, there's so much like meaningful, cause it has to do with the story, but also kind of just like window dressing, I guess you could say. Cause at the base, it's just it's a puzzle. But the graphics are amazing. Like in the desert level, how the little vultures fly by. I think it like you did a really good job in terms of immersion and really making you feel like the combination of the story, and the music too is amazing. I would love to ask about the music. All those things do come together to create a really good immersion. And like, even though you're doing challenging puzzles, you really feel like you're taking part in this story, this medieval, basically fairy tale. But tell me about the music. The music's amazing. Where did it come from?
Again, I'm just using music made by other people. It's licensed music. The songs without words, the music file, the music inside the levels. The your normal music was licensed from the Unity Asset Store.
Okay.
I think it's from two or three, or just two. No, I think it's just two composers. And then the songs, the actual songs from the girls, that all of them are sang by girls. They were licensed from a different service. I don't remember the name exactly right now. Yeah.
Well, you did a great job in choosing the music and combining it with the visuals. The whole game, I really do enjoy it a lot. Like I said, I haven't completed it, but I have every intention of doing so. So I asked this question last time, but I'm going to ask again specifically about Long Ago, A Puzzle Tale. What was release day like for this game for you?
Release day for Long Ago. Like I said, I think I said this last time. What's cool about release day is that you don't have to worry about it having sold or not yet because you don't have access to the numbers. So it was, again, people retweeting or commenting on Twitter, and people with blogs or press or whatnot replying to mails or contacting me about review keys. And then there were keys that I sent earlier, and reviews were starting to come out. And it was really nice because for Long Ago, the reviews were actually, like, most of them in the 7 or 8s. So they were really, really good reviews, and I was very happy with that. I think I only had like a 6 at least in that release day or prior to that, which was really, really nice. And yeah, that's pretty much how it goes. Just interactive players, just interactive reviewers. You watch streams and you go, you join the streams and try to say hi and answer a few questions. And it's very, it builds a lot of good energy. So release day usually builds a lot of good energy, especially, if you see that there are people that actually enjoy your game.
Very cool. So I have one more question about this game, and I'm not sure how much you'll have to say about it, but I'm curious. Elena Temple and this game are very different, in my opinion. I'm just wondering, as an indie dev, how much stock you put in the idea of making similar games and maybe like honing your skills in a certain genre, and kind of maybe trying to perfect a certain genre before moving on to another. I wonder if you have any thoughts on that. Because they say that it's a good idea to kind of operate, to perfect a niche, to serve one audience as well as you can. I'm just curious if you have any thoughts, or if you just say, I want to make this game next, I'm going to make it. It doesn't matter what the genre is.
Well, so this depends a lot of what you as an indie developer want to get out of this career, so to speak. For me, I'm in a privileged position where I managed to make my games mostly alone by licensing assets or music and whatnot, and being the only creative that combines everything. And I can program my stuff, I can write my stuff, I can design my stuff. So but not everybody is in this position. And for me, because I am able to do that alone, I can pivot a lot, and I can change, like you said, I can go from a pixel art platformer to a 3D assets with music and voice acting and a puzzle game and whatnot, and then I can start working with George on a first person or narrative driven game and whatnot. So yeah, I have this freedom, but I think at least, and I find based from my previous experience, that it's a lot harder and maybe not that recommended for that to be the case when it comes to larger teams. So especially if that team manages to create itself a decent audience, and then it can hone their skills to better serve that audience and focus on growing that audience, I think maybe that's the preferred way to go. For me, it would be amazing to have success. It would be amazing to sell a lot of units, but I have fallbacks, So if this doesn't work for me, I can figure it out. The livelihood of other team members don't depend on my decisions as a creative person, right? So I can handle myself, and I have backup plans, and I mostly know what I'm doing with my life. So, but when it comes for teams, and when it comes to paying people, and when it comes to their livelihood, I don't think people should be as careless as I may be. So yeah, like you said, maybe it is a better idea to try to focus on like a genre, or to try to find an art style that's specific to you and your team. So for example, you have Vlambeer, if you know them, they're the guys who made Nuclear Throne and Super Crate Box and a lot of others, and they always made pixel art games with shaky screens and very tight gameplay. They weren't necessarily always in the same genre, but it was close enough. So they were fast games, reflex games. It was either a bit of platformer or a side shooter, or Nuclear Throne was a twin stick shooter. So yeah, they were fast games, and they tried to create this niche for themselves, and they were known for that niche. And this is very common with indie developers that are very successful, especially if they have success with one game, success as how they define it for themselves. It doesn't have to be success like for the general public. You need to sell 1 million units. It can be success, man, I sell 100,000 units. I consider that successful. And then I just want to focus on that audience that I created with that game. And I want to hone my skills and make better games within that space. But ultimately, it really depends on what you want to draw from this experience. For me, as an indie developer, it's very important to try new things, to, use my creativity in various genres, and to try, I just think, what do I want to say? What do I want to make? What do I think is worth spending 1 or 2 years of my life in doing, So it's definitely not going to be, I'm going to spend 2 years and then another 2 years and another 2 years making the same thing over and over. That's not who I am as a person.
Right. Okay. That's interesting. And it's a good segue, since you mentioned working with teams, working with other people, to start our discussion about Last Days of Lazarus. Actually, one more question. Sorry, about long ago. Or not about long ago, just not about Lazarus. Do you have a next game once you're done with Lazarus, like a next game that you want to do just as GrimTalin in mind?
I definitely want to do a game just as GrimTalin. I do have something that's like 80% or sort of decided upon, but I can't say that I'm exactly sure I'm going to do that, because like I said previously, I want to make sure I'm making something that's worth my time for me personally. I want to make something that when I look back, I say, yeah, it was worth spending the time making that, even if it isn't successful. So it's very common for indie games not to be successful, and taking that into account, that means I need to make sure it's rewarding, at least in what I'm making, and not necessarily what it does for me financially.
Okay. Well, whatever that is, I'm extremely excited for it. I know that you can do old school platformers and puzzle games. So whatever you do next, I'm sure it'll be awesome. Eagerly awaiting that. So let's start talking about your collaboration with Darkania Works. It's called, correct?
Yeah.
So how did this collaboration come about on this game, The Last Days of Lazarus?
Well, like the first thing that should be mentioned is that me and George are from the same city. He was working with another team prior to that, and we met through my old company that I was working on. We had a meeting. We were discussing a project they were working on. That actual project was Great Dawn that you played and you enjoyed.
Yes.
And then I just kept tabs and, kept meeting, especially with George. We had coffee together. We hit it off. We became friends, and I was able to see how that game progressed and when it launched and all that. And at some point, he stopped working with that team. He started working on a prototype for Last Days of Lazarus. And at some point when he was ready, he wanted it to show it with me. He sent me a build. But like I said, that was all facilitated by the fact that we were meeting regularly and talking about game design and game dev and whatnot, and ideas that we had. And I saw the prototype. It was really cool. And I knew that, so he was thinking of making it, if possible, just for Steam. He wasn't sure if he was gonna be able to do that or not, but that was his plan. He was working solo on the game too. And, I came with the proposal for me to help him out with the porting and publishing and bring it to consoles too, where I felt that if you diversify and you release on more than one platform, you have more chances for it to be successful, or at least to make enough on each platform so that in total, it's okay. You did okay financially. And he was very okay with that. And we collaborated and, reviewed his work for more than a year. And then at some point we decided that I was going to do a bit more than just the porting side. And we started working as co-devs, and I started working on the UX and like the UX, the user experience. So that means, interface and how the player interacts with the game and all of that stuff, everything that's related to the player experience and to ensuring that it's a smooth experience, that it's intuitive and so on. And I helped them out with a bit of story editing and programming and, just trying together to revamp everything and to make everything as smooth and as good as we can do it together.
Okay. I have so many questions, but let's start with something I was going to ask about long ago, because you mentioned you released long ago simultaneously on multiple platforms. Is that not the case with Elena Temple, or?
No, for Elena Temple, since it was my first game as an indie, I needed to actually, go through the porting process one by one. And then because long ago was also made in Unity, like Elena Temple, I had a lot of, the backbone of the porting was already done, and I was able to, put this in like a big framework that I can use for my future projects done in Unity too. The problem with George's game is that it's not made in Unity, it's made in Unreal this time. So that means I need to go again one by one and go through the porting process for each one, so that at the end, after we manage to release on all the platforms that we target, we're going to have a framework that we're going to use for our second collaboration and our third and whatever it may be.
So would that be advice that you would give to release on multiple platforms if you can initially at release?
If you can. And that's a hard, all caps, if you can. So I think the most important thing with any game is to release it wherever you can as fast as possible. Because, you want to put the games in the hands of your players as fast as possible. If you can do Steam first, definitely do Steam first. Try to do it as good as possible. Try to use all the feedback that you get from Steam players and improve your game. And then when you hit a new console, it's going to be a bit better. And then you're going to hit another console and it depends to you how many you want to do and how long you can stay with that game before you move to another. For me, for example, it was really hard to also do PlayStation for Elena Temple because I spent way too much time on it and bring it to Switch and Xbox One. So I felt it was time to move to another game that was long ago. And, PlayStation is still something that I want to do, but we'll see when it's the right time.
Got it. So do you have any advice on going from a solo developer as the only creative mind, basically, to a partnership slash collaboration with another developer. How does it change the way you develop a game? What kind of mindset changes exist? Any kind of advice you have for people who are solo and are either out of necessity or out of a desire to collaborate are moving to a team-based development situation?
Like the first thing that's really important is to always work with people you respect. You need to respect their skills. You don't need to agree with them all the time. You don't need to work necessarily with people that know everything. And you probably should avoid working with people that think they know everything. But yeah, you need to respect them, and they need to respect you. And as long when you're having discussions and try to figure out what's best, you both come from a place of respect and from a place of love for the game that you're making, it's going to work out. But and also it's very important to decide like who is the creative lead. There's always a need for someone to be able to have the final say. You know, of course, they need to listen to everyone's arguments, but at the end, you need to be okay if that person says, okay, we're going to go with that solution because that's what I think is best. And so they need to have the creative vision. That's mandatory. I know there are teams where they say they don't do that and that everybody has like an equal say. I think that's very difficult. I'm not saying it's impossible to pull off, but I think it's much more difficult than to have someone who has the creative vision. But when I say creative vision, I don't necessarily mean that he has all the decisions when it comes to the product. For example, in my case with George, so he is definitely, like the one with the creative vision. He basically made like almost all the game, but I kind of have like a veto, so to speak, when it comes to, especially to the user experience, when it comes to how we present some things to the player. So I can argue with him about the story. I can tell him, maybe it's better if we do this and that, but he's going to say no, because I think that's the way we need to tell the story. And I'm perfectly fine with that. But at the same point, if I tell him, okay, I understand what you're trying to do with the story, but that doesn't come out right, the user can't understand that because this and this and that, again, he respects and understands that, and then work together to find the solution. So like I said, so each part of a collaboration needs to sort of own a part of the game, and the other one needs to respect that for it to work well. You don't want to have somebody who is bossing around unless that someone is paying everybody.
Right. So it sounds like from the start, you want to have defined roles and stick to those roles.
Yeah, so like defined, but not in like the sense, okay, you're the creative lead and I'm the CEO and he's the COO and whatnot. No, like you need to know where the strengths of each one is. So for example, if it's a collaboration between a programmer and an artist, let's say, you can have the programmer say to the artist, man, that looks ugly, but ultimately it's going to be the artist's decision if that's ugly or not, and then the artist can say to the programmer whatever he wants. But if the programmer says we can't have that in the game because it's going to render with 2 frames per second, that's kind of on the programmer's side to say and to be against implementing something in a certain way, because he knows. So you need to be very aware of what your strengths are in a team, and for each side to respect that in the other.
Got it. Did you ever have a desire to make this type of game before George came along? Like, have you ever wanted to make basically that first person, really good graphics walking sim? I hesitate to use that term, but Is that kind
Oh
of?
no, I love that term. I love the term. I know that people usually use it in a derogative way, but I actually love it, because it expresses. So if someone comes to me and tells me I'm making a walking sim, I'm like, oh yeah, you're my kind of guy. give it to me right now.
Right.
So yeah, I actually worked. I worked on a walking sim before going indie. And I really enjoyed that. It was really close to my heart, and for various reasons that didn't release. It was kind of lost in game dev is complicated sometimes. So
right.
Then I started my indie thing. I did the Elena Temple, but I knew that George was working on Grey Dawn, and I really loved what they were doing. It was much better than what I was making previously. And I was really happy when I had the chance to start working with George on his game, because I really love this kind of game. This is the type of game that I do play a lot of. Narrative games. It's like probably 80% why I play games is for the story. So I really love this sort of game. So it really fit. I would love at some point to direct one of these, but I don't really have the necessary art skills to pull this off. So at some point, if I can find a solution for that, maybe I'll make a walking sim of my own. But for the time being, I'm very happy in working with George and helping him get the best out of his awesome ideas in writing and art.
Very cool. I can attest that Grey Dawn is an amazing game. It's the first full experience that I had on my brand new gaming PC, and I loved every minute of it. And I played the demo of Lazarus. It seems very awesome. It seems similar to Grey Dawn, like with the same, if not better, graphics and all that. And an even more interesting story, I think, too, with it's like a lot more sci-fi, a lot more horror. Not to say that Grey Dawn's absence of that was bad. But what I'm curious because I watched the live stream and you're releasing a demo. I think maybe the answers to these questions might be obvious, and you can tell me that they're obvious and give some answers. But what are the benefits of that live stream you did, and what are the benefits of a demo? Like what is you as a developer? What do you get from a demo? What do you get from a live stream showing people the game in a live stream?
The most valuable from the two for us as developers is definitely the demo, because we want people to play the game. We want people to experience it. We want people to leave us some feedback. We want people to tell us if they find issues and so on. So the demo is definitely the most valuable part. The stream is just something to interact with your tiny community or big community, wherever you may be lucky to have a bigger community. So it was very nice for us to do that stream and to have you and a few other people come and ask us questions and stimulate us in, sharing maybe personal stuff or, inside the stuff from the development of the game. And that was really, really cool. We're going to have another stream as part of Steam Next Fest this Saturday that will probably play, I don't know if the entire demo, but definitely more than we did this time. And again, we're just going to try to give insight from like behind the scenes and what happens there and how George came up with different parts of the game. Again, streams are very nice because they allow you to interact directly with whoever's watching and whoever wants to ask something. But the important parts are the demo for sure. And streams sometimes can act just as little promotion tools for the demo. Steam can see, oh, these guys are broadcasting something. Let's put them in a more visible place. So yeah.
Right. Very cool. I enjoyed the stream. I enjoyed the demo. I especially like how George mentioned that he was the kid in one of the pictures that you find in the apartment, like little things like that. As the gamer, I think it's really cool. So now I have just a few more questions. Kind of more, I don't know, like I'm just curious about kind of more straightforward, maybe a little more like rapid fire. But anyway, so in this collaboration, what have you learned from George?
Ooh, that's
it's a big question, but like, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
So I don't know if learn. Yeah, I guess learned is a good word for it. But I mostly enjoyed just going through the story and try to come up together with a better version of that story. To polishing it and editing it and editing the dialogues and all that. That in the end, I think we came up together. So he made like a very good backbone, an incredibly good backbone, and then we just managed to polish it out together and making it shine a bit better. And that was my most favorite part from this collaboration.
Cool. And what wisdom do you think you have imparted on George during this collaboration?
I think the most important one would be to always consider the user experience, always consider what the user sees and what the user experience. So including in terms of menus, or including in terms of how the game saves progress. So always try to put yourself in the shoes of the player and, think, would that be okay for you if it happened to you?
Okay. And again, this question, we might have already gone over it, but if you don't mind distilling it, if you could, what is something, as a solo developer moving into a partnership, what is something that you gain from a partnership, and what is something that you lose or give up?
You definitely gain the ability to make something much better than you can make on your own. Right. So, unless you're somebody who can make absolutely everything to perfection, I don't think there is such a person, but, unless you're that kind of person, when you work in a team, you'll definitely be able to create something better together. That doesn't mean it will necessarily happen, because you also need to have the right chemistry and to, be the kind of team that actually finds better solutions together and not, make everything slow. What you lose, you lose a lot of ownership, and you need to be okay with that when you work in a team. So you need to be okay that not all the final decision will be your own. You'll need to be okay to share the spotlight, or, to even shine the spotlight brighter on your partner than on yourself. And you need to be okay with that. And you need to know what you're getting out of this collaboration. So, probably nobody's going to come to me and say, hey, man, yeah, awesome, you made a great game, because that's not the case. The game is like 90% George's, and I'm perfectly fine with that. And I'm perfectly fine if someone just comes to me and says, man, I'm glad you helped George bring this to more consoles, or that's perfectly fine for me.
Cool. All right, just 3 more questions. And these are questions that I have now begun asking everyone that I interview. What is something you want gamers to know about indie game development?
That I really hate that phrase that's thrown a lot, especially on Twitter, like lazy devs or greedy devs. And that's just total bullshit. And it's like almost never in my life have I encountered a lazy or a greedy dev. It always comes to the situations, the circumstances of their development. Either they didn't have enough time to do it better. Maybe they didn't have the knowledge to do it better. And, to gain that knowledge would have cost them a lot of time and money. And almost never is it that the devs are the greedy ones. When they make a game, those are always circumstances imposed on them by other factors, be it publishers or bosses or whatnot. So, yeah. And there is always the case where just because something doesn't sit right with a group of players doesn't necessarily mean that the devs actually acted against their interest. Maybe they just thought it was a better solution that will please more then it will, especially with art, you can't please everyone with art. So at some point you need to pick your battles and say, okay, this is my target audience. And that means that other group is going to get really pissed because I targeted that audience. And, that doesn't mean you're bad as a developer. You just made a decision. And I think, audiences need to be okay that not everything is for them. So I'm like the kind of person who would really love for Dark Souls to have a difficulty option. I played through them, I finished them, I get the point of, the acceleration that you feel when you finish them, but I still want them to have a difficulty option. But I don't go shouting that on Twitter because that's pointless. I just can choose not to play them if I don't feel they're the right game for me. And that's awesome that other people think they're the best game made and it's for them. So that's cool,
Yeah. I agree. I think I've told this to you before, but my mission here at Indie Game International is to celebrate amazing games made by cool people and share knowledge and experiences within indie game development. And I think I might want to add to it that I kind of also want to humanize indie game developers. I think maybe some people don't realize the massive difference between Call of Duty and, Elena Temple, and the amount of people and hours, or not hours, but the amount of people and resources that are thrown at one, and the artistry, and I guess also like the scrappiness that goes into creating the other. So thank you for that sentiment. I appreciate it, and I agree with it. One more question. What is one piece of advice that you would give to your fellow indie developers?
Always have a backup plan. Especially in this industry, it's very common that things won't go your way. That can mean, during development, it can mean when you release, it can mean after release, you can have all sorts of issues. Like, always try to have a backup plan. Always try to think, okay, if this doesn't work out the way I want it to work out, what do I do? It's perfectly fine to say, okay, I'm just going to make one thing. If it doesn't work out, I'll do something else. That's perfectly fine. But just be honest with yourself that that's what's going to happen. And then, just don't put your family at risk by not having a plan. Always try to have a plan when you do that. So when I started doing this indie dev, I actually knew what I was doing, and I knew how long I can go on doing this even if I don't make a dime, and I'm always aware of how long I can still do this. So it's best to have that kind of stuff in mind.
Yeah, it sounds, through the conversations I've had with you, that you definitely have your head on straight, not just in terms of creativity, but like the business side of things and being realistic. So I appreciate, once again, your wisdom there. So I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation once again. I love talking to you. I love your game. Real quick though, could you possibly call out for me another developer that you respect and admire in this industry that you think would make a great guest like you made for me today?
It's going to be so obvious. It's going to be George, my partner in crime, George from Darkania Works, for sure.
Okay, perfect.
And I would really love to hear that interview that you make with him, because he has a lot of insight also from how he sees game development from his side. So that's really cool. It's going to be great.
I'd be really excited for that, especially because I've already played Grey Dawn and I already know that I love it. So makes my life easier. So real quick, tell us how we can get the game long ago, or how we can get in touch with you on social media. And also just tell us about how we can get maybe the demo for Lazarus.
Absolutely. So the game, both my games, Elena Temple and Logo Go, are on Nintendo Switch, Xbox, and Steam. You can find them directly on the store. My website is GrimTalin.com. You can find there all sorts of getting in touch with me, but the best one is my Twitter account at GrimTalin. And I usually post news and updates and screenshots and whatnot on Twitter. So that's probably the best way to follow me. And also I reply to DMs very quickly on Twitter. So again, but mail works fine too. The demo for Last Days of Lazarus is available on Steam since yesterday, so you can go and download it now. And please leave some feedback if you play it, and please wishlist the game if you like it.
Okay. I have done all those things you mentioned, so hopefully the people listening will do them as well.
Thank you.
Once again, GrimTalin, thank you so much for joining me, for imparting your wisdom and your experience within this industry on me and on my listeners. And I guess that's it. I look forward to Lazarus, and thank you so much once again.
Awesome. Thank you too. And I can't wait to make another game so we can do another one of these.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Well, that wraps up the interview. Thank you for listening, and thank you again to GrimTalin for taking the time out of his day to speak with me. You can find GrimTalin on the web at GrimTalin.com. That's GrimTalin.com, and on Twitter and Instagram at the same name. Grab Long Ago A Puzzle Tale on PC, Switch, and Xbox, and grab Elena Temple as well while you're at it. You will not be disappointed. Wishlist Last Days of Lazarus. That game is awesome. The demo is creepy and intriguing, and you can play it on Steam. Okay, all links are in the show notes, don't forget. Also, find me on Twitter at IndieGameINTL. Also, if you want to sponsor this podcast, or you have a great idea for a future guest, you can email me at sumadrepodcasts@gmail.com. Also, I hope you have an amazing day.